third. How can Sony make their new portable more successful than the Vita? Wouldn't it have had the same problem? That developing state-of-the-art graphics is expensive? How can they keep a handheld and a PlayStation 6 properly stocked? Even Nintendo, who won the portable front of every console generation they've been in by a huge margin, decided that they can't do both. I think that's a fairly good question, but I think it's fairly easily answered by the fact that I guess it's basically the Switch model expanded out into properly separate devices, same architectural building blocks, same development environment, probably much the same assets. And, they're basically scaling in a way that we're kind of getting a slight preview of with the power saver mode, and indeed with Pro support, where you actually have these sort of firm device types that address a certain performance level. So I think the difference is that with Vita, I don't think there was an easy route to producing a port of your PlayStation 3 game, although we did see some. But I think it's much easier this time around. So in effect, it is a sort of hybrid solution like Switch 2. It's just across multiple devices rather than two profiles within a single device. What do you think there, John?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Like, they're not going to... I don't believe they want to release another handheld that is its own unique platform. It's a system that's meant to live within the current PlayStation ecosystem, right? I think that's what they are going for here. I think that's the only thing they can go for, because, as they say, doing a dedicated handheld with its own library, it's not going to work. There's just no way. The resources needed to keep that running, not possible these days. It doesn't make sense. But what they are suggesting instead is essentially almost like building on the success of the PlayStation Portal in a way, where that thing was a gigantic surprise runaway success for Sony in a way that I don't even think they saw coming. And if they can actually make a proper handheld that can play these games, one that you can take with you anywhere, similar to the Switch, I actually think there's quite a big audience for that. But because it's just an accessory as opposed to a dedicated platform, it doesn't necessarily need to represent any sort of like new paradigm or like specific platform. They can sell what they can sell, which is also different from PSVR 2, which, even though that was an accessory, still required its own unique games to be used. And that's the whole idea here, is that that won't be the case. So even if you buy this and let's say it comes out, it does what we think it's going to do, but it ends up failing, the device would still be useful, I think. You know what I mean? Like, that's the whole idea, is that it doesn't necessarily need to rely on the success of itself to be a compelling or usable device, because it shouldn't have its own library.
I think from my perspective, the question is the extendability into the next generation, because it's obviously, I think there are going to be reductions needed to make the PlayStation 5 versions running on that handheld. So what about the PlayStation 6 versions? How scalable would those be? What do you think, Alex?
I mean, eminently more scalable. I've said in the past that, and you've said it just like last week, like the longest cross-gen period ever, like basically until like maybe PS6, PS5 is still around, right into like the beginnings of PS7 or whatever that is, if there's a PS7. So I think titles that are going to be made from now to then are going to be using very similar assets across the board and will be much more scalable, especially with this, we're getting a nice die shrink, new RDNA, new Zen handheld from the Sony device here, potentially. I think it'll be really nice and powerful, actually. And I think things will scale gracefully to it, barring a couple of examples. We'll still have to see how Unreal is on a device like that. It's still troublesome on most handhelds. But yeah, I think there's going to just be a lot more scalability, and games are just going to be made for that, as they're already making them that way for PC anyway, like very scalable.